Hi there. This is Mike Tidwell, and I see so many incredible faces. This is Mike Tidwell, Director of the Chesapeake Climate Action Network. Welcome to the guest room in my house in Tacoma Park, and I am happy to see all of you sheltering in place and social distancing. Welcome to the first mass Zoom call that CCAN has ever organized, and it may be one of the first Zoom calls, state-based Zoom calls like this in the state of Maryland. Of course, we'll probably be experiencing a lot more of these calls across Maryland in the coming days, and I know we're all sad about the circumstances that have brought us all together and required us to meet this way. Today, I do believe that the world reached about 500,000 cases of coronavirus, including Greta Thunberg of Sweden. You may have seen in the Washington Post today or follow her on Twitter, where she has been clinically diagnosed as having coronavirus. So this has affected all people all over the world. We at CCAN, like many of you I know on this call, are grieving for all the people in Maryland and worldwide who are suffering medically and economically from this crisis. And we all know that the worst is yet to come, which is perhaps the scariest part. But I think we can all agree that we have all also seen an extraordinary level of cooperation across this state, across this country, and across the world, and a lot of kindness, which has been inspiring despite the uncertainty, despite the fears that we're experiencing. And this is pretty much why CCAN decided to organize this call tonight. It's not just to figure out ways that we can still continue to organize on the issue of climate change in an era of coronavirus, but it's also a way to figure out ways where we at CCAN can continue to be your friends, your neighbors, and be in community with you in the coming weeks and months. Our staff at CCAN is entirely practicing social distancing, working from home, but we haven't slowed down our work, our actual work. And I think it's interesting what Emily Frias on our staff wrote in the email that we sent across Maryland inviting you to this Zoom call, that the times we're living in really at moments feel apocalyptic. But interestingly, the word apocalypse comes from the Greek word meaning to reveal. And I think so much has been revealed to us just in the last week or so. And certainly to many children living in China, the actual stars in the sky have been revealed to them for the first time in their lifetime at night because of the clearing pollution. And people in Venice have seen fish and underwater grasses in the canals for the first time because of the reduction in boat traffic pollution. And again, also the extraordinary level of kindness and cooperation that has been revealed around the world and shown us what people are capable of all over the world in a moment of crisis. And all of this, I think, should give us something to hang on to as we not only deal with this crisis, but continue to look for solutions long-term to the global crisis of climate change. Many of you have heard me refer to Greta Thunberg's, my favorite line from Greta Thunberg, where she says, you know, don't look to young people for hope. Don't look to your idealized leaders for hope. Hope only comes in action. And it's in action that we can remain hopeful even at this troubling time. And that's what we want to do. We want to talk about ways that we can stay in community with you tonight and we can take action. So here's how this call is going to work. We're going to have 4 brief speakers after me. And after those speakers, we're going to open it up to you. We want to get questions from you. We want to know, you know, how can we help you? What's on your mind? What sorts of trainings or ideas do you have for online organizing? And in terms of our speakers, I'm really excited because we're going to sort of cover the realms of the spiritual, the legislative, the grassroots, and the digital. So that's where we're headed. Once we get through the speakers, we're going to open it up for questions from all of you. And first, I want to introduce our first speaker, the Reverend Lennox Yearwood, who is President and CEO of the Hip Hop Caucus and also a member of the Chesapeake Climate Action Network Board of Directors. So I want to turn it over to you, Reverend Yearwood.
Awesome. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, it is great to see you all. I actually want to hear from you. As Mike just said, definitely for all of our community, for all of our world, you know, this is a catastrophic event, and it has changed. I mean, I was just thinking the other day of making a joke that, you know, this year was leap year, so we added one day to Black History Month. And so I remember when I saw my friend and what we were talking about on February 29th, which was just 25 days ago, which seems like 25 years ago. But it just is amazing how much time and how much our world has changed. But for those of us on this call, let me just say this, as climate activists, you know, the reality is twofold. The first is that this is an opportunity for us to show how much we care, not about the planet, but the people on the planet. That's a very important moment for us. I think that over the course, as we approach the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, you know, we sometimes haven't done as well on that mission to show people on the globe that they are as important as other things. I mean, we've done it, but through our work and our policy, fighting for clean air and for clean water, but I think just that compassionate. So I'm excited to have seen so many groups like CCAN and other groups in the environmental space who have been literally putting together plans around COVID-19 and around the coronavirus and seeing what we could do for our grandmoms and grandfathers and really denouncing. I like the fact that we denounced the fact that when folks want to put profits before people, the outrage from our side was blown off the roof. We were quarantined, but you could feel the outrage of folks wanting to just give arbitrary dates to go back to work or open for business. And I think that was fantastic, but also that we didn't lose sight of the goal. I am glad that the stimulus package that is, I guess, coming out, that when they were looking to bail out the fossil fuel industry, you know, folks, many groups, again, like CCANs and Friends of the Earth and other groups, 350 and others, you know, were right there saying no. I like the fact that many of our young people around the globe who were planning on doing many Earth Day activities have already, from Future Coalition and Zero Hour and Sunrise and others and Extinction Rebellion, immediately went into figuring out ways to create digital Earth Days and opportunities. I'm so glad that my group that was working on Stop the Money Pipeline that me and Bill McKibben put forth back in January. I'm excited to see, I'm excited to see so many of those entities being held accountable, from Chase and BlackRock and the whole litany of them, even though, you know, we will see one of the pieces, Mike, we just saw was BlackRock was put in charge of some of the money in the stimulus. So we'll see how much they've turned around in their ways. So I'm excited also the fact that as a planet, we've come together. Language barriers, culture barriers, from the city, from Detroit, from right in here in Montgomery County or Prince George's County or Anne Arundel, or wherever we are in Maryland. I'm excited that we are doing what we have to do. That's a great sign for humanity. And I'm also glad that this is teaching us a lesson as environmentalists, we kind of should have been on Zoom and Skype a long time ago. And we should have been watching our footprint and not doing so many conferences and things. And so I'm excited that maybe this is also helping us to reboot in this process. So I just want to say to you that we have a long way to go. I mean, the one thing I have heard that we shouldn't do is this kind of look at the response for the coronavirus and say that should have been the response for the climate crisis. Of course it should have been, we know that. But let's not look at it from that lens. Let's look at it from the standpoint of now people understand that one, elections do matter. Putting people who are unqualified in positions has consequences. Science does matter, and no matter what you want to do with science, it does have an impact. And that, you know, the issue of our climate doesn't go away. Like the same way people are hoping that this virus will just somehow go away with the summer heat, that it just doesn't work that way. And so this will be an opportunity, I believe, to do all of that. Now, I know, Mike, I am, as you know, I'm a pretty hardcore environmentalist. You probably heard I was running down a whole lot of environmental stuff here, and I'm also a birder, so I'm actually kind of love being home, y'all. I've been watching birds all day long, so I've been enjoying this moment. But Mike asked me, because I am a reverend. I went to school for that. He asked me to do some uplifting stuff and to make sure that we were all happy and making it along. But so I found a poem that I wanted, that was written in this process, that I want to read, and then I will turn it back over to Mike. You may have already heard this poem. Some of you may not have, but I think it's very powerful. And it's by Gurpreet Gill. That's Gutpreetgill. And the poem is called What If? Oh, hold on one second, let me just fill some water. The poem is called What If? What if we subscribe to the philosophy that life is always working out for us, that there is an intelligence far greater than humans at work, that all is interconnected? What if this coronavirus is here to help us to reset, to remember what is truly important, reconnecting with family and community, reducing travel so that the environment, the skies, the air, our lungs all get a break. Parts of China are seeing blue sky and clouds for the first time in forever, with the factories being shut down. Working from home rather than commuting to work, less pollution, more personal time. Reconnecting with family as there is more time to connect. Connecting with family in a way that we're showing love once again to those who are older and younger. An invitation to turn inwards, a deep meditation, rather than the usual extroverted going out to self-soothe, to reconnect with self. What is really important to me, a reset economically, the working poor, the lack of healthcare access for over 30 million in the US, the need for paid sick leave. How hard does one need to work to be able to live, to have a life outside of work? And washing our hands, how did that become a new thing that we needed to remember? But yes, we did. The presence of grace for all, There's a shift underway in our society. What if it is one that is for us, favorable for us? What if this virus is an ally in our evolution, in our remembrance of what it means to be connected, humane, living a simpler life, to be less impactful, more kind to our environment, and offering from our heart this day, offered as another perspective, another way of relating to this virus, this unfolding, this evolution. It was time for a change. We all knew that, and change has arrived. What if? Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Reverend Yearwood. Again, that was Reverend Lennox Yearwood, who's president of the Hip Hop Caucus and a board member of the Chesapeake Climate Action Network. So thank you again, Rev. And so we'll go from the art of poetry to the poetry of legislation in Annapolis. You all know that more than our personal lives were disrupted by this virus, but the political life of the state was shut down early in terms of the legislative session. So I want to hand it over to Stephen Hershkowitz, who's our Maryland State Director and our top lobbyist in Annapolis Whisperer, to give us an update on what happened and where do we go from here in terms of state legislation. Stephen?
Thanks, Mike. I'll try to be as poetic as I can be, but can't live up to that. So I just want to reemphasize something that the Reverend just said, I think in the beginning of his remarks about, a reminder that we fight on climate change, not just to save the planet, but to save the people who live on the planet. And that, this crisis that we're in right now is really a good way to ground ourselves in that work and focus on the people that we're trying to uplift, not just that are here right now, but are going to be here for generations to come. So as Mike mentioned, the legislative session got cut early by 19 days. They adjourned sine die last Wednesday, and it prevented a lot of things from being passed that I think we're on track to pass if this had been any other legislative session. And climate change is unfortunately was the kind of issue that would have had a lot of success this session, but saw little success because of it being cut short. There was a local government climate resiliency authority bill that allows our county governments to create bonding authorities to help with projects like building seawalls or raising buildings up that are on coastlines, but there were no mitigation bills, significant mitigation bills that passed in this session. So a number that we were focused on, I'm going to talk about four really quickly. The big one that we were focused on was the Climate Solutions Act. This was the legislation to update and reform the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act. It was introduced by Senator Paul Pinsky, Delegate Dana Stein. We had a lot of positive reaction to the bill and saw quite a bit of success, especially in the Senate. So we had a bipartisan 8-2 vote out of the first Senate committee that the bill went to. That was the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee that is chaired by Senator Pinsky. We got a bipartisan vote there. 2 Republicans voted for it, so we were very excited about that. And then the bill went to the Budget and Tax Committee. It got delayed a couple of weeks because they were working on the budget. And then coronavirus outbreak happened. So Budget and Tax did end up moving the bill out of committee, but we believe on a party line vote, although we were watching on live stream and could not see all the votes that were tallied. They haven't been updated on the website. Still waiting on that, but we were able to get it out of committee, and it just got held. So it didn't go to the full Senate floor because they ran out of time. We had been working with the House committee that was going to take up the bill, had the Senate passed it, the Environment and Transportation Committee, the Environment Subcommittee was walking through the bill, did 2 different read-throughs of it. So we thought that we were well positioned to move that bill had we had another week or 2. But we want to thank everyone for all the calls that you made or emails that you sent throughout session on this bill. We I think built a lot of momentum for coming back with really strong emissions reduction requirements, like 60% reduction by 2030, getting to net zero emissions by 2045. A number of the other things in the bill, the equity working group, climate justice working group, I think got a lot of positive response. The climate jobs working group focused on labor got a lot of positive response. So we're excited to bring those kind of policies back to the legislature, and we're hopeful that I'll come back to this in a second, but we might be able to act on something if the legislature comes back for a special session in the summer, or potentially earlier, fingers crossed. The other bill that we spent a lot of CCAN time and resources on was the Public Service Commission Climate Test Bill. This was the bill that was going to require the Public Service Commission, which is the state's entity that regulates public utilities, to consider climate change when making decisions. This sounds like a no-brainer. It's crazy that they don't already consider it, but we know because of the decision in 2019 that they currently do not consider climate change when making decisions on things like approving power plants that create lots of emissions. So we got great response to this bill, technical bill, no-brainer fix, passed the Senate 32-14, and then did not get a vote in economic matters as we ran out of time on the House side. We also were working on trying to, once again, working to try to get trash incineration out of the state's renewable portfolio standard, making sure we can take away state subsidies for it. That unfortunately did not get a vote in either chamber after the Finance Committee decided they were going to punt on all renewable portfolio standard RPS bills this session. So nothing having to do with the RPS made it through that committee. And then community choice energy, this was a bill that Delegate Lord Charkoudian was working on, and a lot of folks from Montgomery County and Anne Arundel County, and then eventually Baltimore City, Prince George's County, other municipalities were rising up during session asking for the authority to pool together all ratepayers in their jurisdictions and purchase renewable energy at cheaper rates. This was restricted as it went through the House process to a Montgomery County pilot, and capped at 7 years as a 7-year pilot program. We were hoping that this would get across the finish line in the last days after it moved through the House, but unfortunately the Finance Committee did not put it up for a vote. So, the next steps here are going to be looking at if there's going to be a special session. The legislative leadership, when they adjourned early, said that they were going to look at coming back in the last week of May. At this point, that's looking like perhaps a best case scenario. They potentially could come back a little bit later than that. Although if they want to act on anything affecting the next budget cycle, they have to meet before the end of June. So we're just going to keep an eye on that and see what comes up. And we're preparing to see if there's a way that, like the federal government, there are a lot of folks that have been urging, for the stimulus plan to include climate actions. We were happy that to see that there's going to be $25 billion for public transit in that federal stimulus package. We're trying to see if at the state level, if they're going to come back and put forward any sort of stimulus package here in Maryland, that they include climate actions in it. And so that's what our focus is going to be in the special session. One last point to make, they passed a number of other, non-climate related bills during session, a big session for education. I do want to highlight that they passed a bill focused on responding to the coronavirus crisis that authorizes the governor to take several actions that he has since taken, authorizing the governor to ensure that any costs for testing for COVID-19 is free for patients, and that either is going to be taken on by the government or by insurers, that if a vaccine is developed, that would be cost-free as well, allowing telehealth expansion. So for example, out-of-state doctors would now be allowed to do telehealth with folks in Maryland to give people more options on getting treatment, and prohibiting price gouging of medical, food, and cleaning supplies. So a number of other protections for workers, protecting workers by prohibiting employers from firing any employees for having to isolate or quarantine, and extending unemployment benefits as well. So I'm happy to answer questions later on in the call, but that's our legislative update. And I'm now passing it off to Emily Frias, our Grassroots coordinator.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Well, and thank you so much to other CCANers on the call and everybody for joining us. We have a lot of people on this call. I want you to, if you are not in gallery view already on Zoom, I'm in gallery view, which is where you can see all of the different faces that are on. You can, if you're on a desktop, you can just press Alt F2, or up in the top corner of your screen, you can see a little option. You can see how many faces are doing this. We have 6 pages of faces here, which is awesome. So thank you so much. We are still here, and we are still working, and we really, really want to connect with you and find out how you're doing. As Mike said, we've made a lot of adjustments to our organizing and our strategy. We have a lot of planning ongoing for exactly how the special session is going to work and how our organizing is going to change. We're working really, really hard at that. But just remember that physical distancing doesn't necessarily mean social distancing, right? We want to make sure that we're here for you. I'm really interested in setting up one-on-ones. If you're interested in setting up a one-on-one with me to talk about how you're dealing with coronavirus, I'm an ear. And also learning more about our organizing strategy. I really, really want to do that. I really, really want to be with this community in this time. So if you're interested in that, you can email me at emily@chesapeakeclimate.org. But next I'm going to talk about how you can stay safe and a couple of actions that are available to you right now in this moment. If you're like me, I like to take action. That makes me feel hopeful, and there are things you can do. So first off, for safety information, I really encourage you to follow the governor's website. I've been watching his press conferences every time he gives one. There's a list of of recordings of his press conferences on his website, and I will paste a link in the chat, and I'll also we'll send you a follow-up email with that and a couple other links as well. But that's the best way to get straight from the source accurate information about what the state actions are on climate and on corona, and what how to stay within those parameters. It's also, you can go to coronavirus.maryland.gov for accurate information about what's going on with corona right now in the state. There's been a lot of misinformation also circulating, so you really want to make sure before you share something that it is accurate information. This is a great source for accurate information. We'll also send you a link, and I'll drop a link in the chat for county-based hotlines. So if you're experiencing something, symptoms, especially to the numbers that you can call for your county to get help. So we really want to make sure that you're connected to those resources. But then getting into actions that you can take, right, that really helps me personally cope, is finding what can I do, what can I control, how can I make a difference right now. One big way is to give blood if you're eligible. Now, my mom and her partner just went today to give blood. You do be mindful that you do have to have an appointment. They're being very, very cautious. My mom's partner shows up early. She's always 15 minutes early to everything. And they got there 15 minutes early. They had them wait in the car. You have to have an appointment. So be mindful of that. But I really do encourage you to do that if you can. And then another thing you can do is engage in mutual aid. So one of our favorite favorite Congress people, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Mariam Kaba, a big activist here in the States, did a workshop last week all about mutual aid, where they described it as cooperation for the sake of the common good. And it's really a coming together of individuals, of grassroots people coming together to meet each other's needs and recognizing that as humans, our survival is dependent on each other. And your health actively contributes to my health. I think that's never been more clear. So we really want to take care of each other. We really want to act with solidarity and find and know that all of us have something to give and all of us have something that we need. That's really what that idea is about. So for more information on that, we're going to share a link with you that gives more information about what mutual aid is and a huge map of active local mutual aid projects. And if you go on there and you don't see one, there's also tools for how to start that up in your community. So making sure that your neighbors have a way to connect with each other, and making sure that, you know, if somebody needs something and you have it, there's a way for that person to connect with you. So that's a really, really interesting thing. And there's also important information about how to do that safely. So that's my time. I'm going to paste some of those links in there, and we're going to, in the chat, and we're going to send an email with those links as well. And now I'm going to pass it on to Denise, who's going to talk a little bit more about digital organizing. Thanks.
Thanks, Emily. Hi, everyone. I want to harken back a little bit to what Stephen was saying about how we're still going to keep fighting on the climate because we know now more than ever that it's better to get ahead of the crisis. But so you're all here right now and you're probably wondering, how are we actually going to do that? How are we going to organize and make change if we're all stuck at home? There's actually a lot we can do digitally, and we've already been seeing this kind of advocacy trending more into the digital realm. Basically, we're seeing those trends speed up times like a million. Like my 3-year plan to expand our digital tech tools is more like a 1-month plan. So we're still kind of working through what exactly that's going to look like for CCAN, but I just want to let you in a little bit on what we're thinking. And then in our Q&A portion coming up, we're going to hear from you what interests you, what excites you, you know, what you want to see from us.
Can you please speak up a little?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Is this better?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. So just going to let you in on what we're thinking in terms of our digital advocacy, and then we'll hear from you about what you want to see from us. And you'll hear more from us soon after that. But just to stay straight off the gate, social media is going to be a big part of our digital campaigns, but it's not going to be the only thing. So if you've never been on Twitter before, don't freak out. There's a place for everyone to stay involved. This call right now is an example of that. If you're on this video call, you can help us move forward. By the way, this is our first ever video call of this size. We upgraded Zoom today just for this, so we could fit all of you. Because this kind of face-to-face interaction is still important, and it is still possible online. But all of our digital work going forward is going to stem from our existing theory of change. It's nothing new. We're going to build people power. We're going to change the narrative. We're going to pressure our decision makers until we win. To show you what that looks like, going backwards a little bit, starting with pressuring our decision makers. We can't go to Annapolis in person right now to their offices, but we can still reach out by every other means, through emails, through phone calls, and through Twitter and Facebook. And in fact, a post on a legislator's Facebook wall might even go further than an email, because their staff person knows that every single person who follows that legislator on Facebook is going to see your comment too. It might not just get deleted in their email inbox. So that's one new way that we're going to consider reaching out to our legislators. And now I'm changing the narrative. Can you all raise your hands if you've heard of the climate strikes? I hope everyone's raising their hands. And now keep your hand raised if you've heard of the digital climate strikes. Cool, got some hands, bunch of hands. Climate strikes are still happening. They're taking place online. Instead of attending a rally, everyone who's participating is just taking a photo of themselves, holding their protest sign, and tweeting it with the hashtag digital climate strike. And as Yearwood mentioned, the big Earth Day climate strikes are now going to take place exclusively online, a 3-day live streamed event, which is like unprecedented for our movement. And on top of that, I will say we still have our traditional ways of shaping the narrative online, with letters to the editor, with our opinion pieces, and things like that. Basically, if you're telling your story online, you are helping us change the narrative until we win. And then finally, back to the people power. You are the people power. We are the people power. And think about just in the past couple of weeks, how many people have you called to see how they are? How many people have you chatted with to check in? We all have the power to build up our own networks. And, you know, the next action that you take, invite all your friends and family. And because it's online, no matter where they live, they can take it with you. Ask them to send an email to your legislator, or send a tweet, or make a call. So another part of this is going to be for us to continue working with you to build our community more online. So it's more of a community. So I'm just going to put out there that we're going to think about some virtual events like virtual book clubs or movie streaming nights, things like that. And then finally, we want to give you the tools and the skills to take part in this new digital world. So we will be putting together some online trainings. We'll be seeing what else is out there. We'll be asking you what you want to learn. But just as an example, the Sunrise Movement is doing a really great job at this right now. There's millions of high schoolers at home with so much time on their hands, and they're taking advantage of that by putting together what they call Sunrise School, a big 4-day course in the Green New Deal, coronavirus, and climate change. So they've been, you know, big inspiration to me in terms of what they're doing online, and we'll hope to see more from us too. This call is just the beginning. You're going to get an email from us with a survey to find out more about how you want to get involved. And I just want to reiterate that we're not stopping. We're going to keep fighting for a safe climate future. And I'm really sad about what's going on, and I'm really mad, but I'm also extremely fired up about how we're going to keep moving forward, bring our campaigns online in the meantime, and I'm really excited to bring you all with us. Thanks.
Great. So now, thank you to all the speakers. Really, really appreciate it. And now we want to hear from all of you. And Emily, I'm handing it back to you. Is that right? Okay, great.
Yes, great. So now we are headed into Q&A. We'll have about 50 minutes for this section. And at first, we'll actually be asking you, the audience, several questions. And then with whatever remaining time, we'll leave for Q&A. But remember, you can always contact us by email if there's something that we don't get to. So for this section, you're going to need to use the raise hand tool here in Zoom. So to join the queue, you're going to click on the participants button at the bottom of your chat of the Zoom window here, and this will open a menu of like you'll see all the participants, and then underneath that you'll see an option that says raise hand. Click on that option to enter the queue, and then when it's your turn to speak, you'll see an on-screen notification that the host has asked you to unmute yourself, and then you'll have to accept the on-screen, you'll have to click the on-screen answer that says unmute now, and then you'll be able to start talking. And if you're only on the phone, you dial *9 on your phone keypad. And you will hear the mute, you are unmuted, and you can go ahead and ask your question. We're also going to have Stephen let you know when you've been called on. So for our questions, we're going to take 2 to 3 verbal responses to respect that 9 p.m. end time that we set. You're also welcome to use the chat to discuss, and I'll be reading that. But we might not read that out loud just in the interest of time. But you are certainly welcome to use the chat to discuss, which I see that a lot of people are using. So a reminder for everybody, that is you click the participants button, and then at the bottom in the bottom right hand, you will see an option once you click that button to raise your hand. And if you're on the phone, you use *9. Okay, so right before we get into that, we just want to establish a couple of quick ground rules. First, we are only using the term coronavirus or COVID-19. We are being particularly watchful of any racially charged terms or placing blame that is just a really important piece of making sure we're all in this together, only using COVID-19 and coronavirus to refer to this issue. And we're really avoiding celebrating too much the environment, the way that we're experiencing emissions right now. That's not how we really want to solve this problem. So we're gonna explore a little bit of how the climate crisis is connected, but we want to be mindful that we're putting people first here, and that's really the crux of the issue. So we just wanted to set those ground rules for this discussion. Okay, so now on to our first question. What are you all doing personally to support your community in this time? And your community could look like your local volunteer group, it could look like your family, it could look like your neighbors. We just want to highlight and get to know how you are all stepping up to support your community in this time.
All right, so Laura, I have you unmuted.
Great. Yes, I'm Laura. I live in Greenbelt, and actually due to Emily's inspiration, we have a mutual aid group going on in Greenbelt, as well as there's one in Prince George's County for the wider area, and even wider than that in the DMV area. So many of us are spending a lot of our day trying to figure out how to build a mutually supportive community in Greenbelt.
All right, we have Jim. You are unmuted now.
Hey, if you mean Jim Lawrenson?
Yes.
Then yes, thank you. So we're in our community, I guess, basically using, and by community, I can only think these days of the community of the climate action folks. And so we have lots of Zoom calls going on. It's amazing how many people have learned this. It's fantastic. It's going to definitely cut back on, you know, emissions once this is all over and people get used to this. So we're trying to train as many people as possible on that so they can get connected and actually have social connection with the physical distancing.
Thank you, Jim. Betsy Singer, I think you are already unmuted.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Well, I just spent a large part of the afternoon with a list of people, about 25 people I called, to let them know. I'm chairing the Jewish Community Relations Council in Howard County, and to let them know what our federation has set up for folks in the community. Specifically, we have a fund, a COVID-19 fund, that people have contributed several hundreds of dollars and maybe up to 1,000 so far. And that money is available for folks who are hitting hard times. And we also have a social worker who's available. And one thing that people really liked, and I think this is doesn't cost anything, is we have a group of volunteers who have agreed to do groceries for folks who are elderly, infirm, don't want to get out because they're immune compromised. And so these volunteers would actually do the grocery shopping, or take the list and go, or if they just wanted it picked up, then they'll do it for them. And so there's been a big response to that. So it's just a way to, number one, maintain contact with folks, and two, actually do some service for them. And they seemed very appreciative and surprised,
Thank you, Betsy. Great work. All right, next we have Mike Goodman.
Yeah, hello. Yes, I'm a little to the west of Maryland. I'm in Wisconsin. My city, Madison, has probably one of the earliest of the mutual aid network concepts going. I'm a registered participant in that. I recently benefited from that when I was able to get somebody to take me grocery shopping over the weekend, which was most helpful. and I intend to continue being a registered participant with offers of my talents, which unfortunately aren't that great, but I'm available as far as I can. And so that's the extent of my participation locally. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for all your work. And one last one before we move on. I got Linda. I'm going to unmute you, or you're already unmuted. Go ahead.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, it's Linda from Frederick. And on a different note, I'm also in the League of Women Voters, and we have put a toolkit online for our county about registering for absentee ballots. The election has been pushed off, you've probably heard, and we need to educate people throughout the next few months about how to get absentee ballots, since we're staying home and we have plenty of time to do this anyway. So I think this can help in a lot of ways, the climate issues as well, getting the right people in office.
Thank you, Linda. All right, Emily, are we moving on to the next question?
Yes, and thank you so much, everybody. It's super exciting to hear all those examples, and thanks for the shout out, Laura. And huge shout out to everybody doing that work. So this is how we come together. So with that, our next question is hearing your thoughts about the connections between specifically the response and the impacts of the crisis and of the coronavirus crisis and the climate crisis. Because I think that there's a lot of ways that the problems have some intersection beyond, what we might be immediately seeing in terms of how they present as policy problems, or the way that we're going to need to respond to them, or the way that they impact people disproportionately. So we want to hear about that. I know that at CCAN we were interested in particularly hearing Rev's thoughts. So we'll probably call on Rev first if he has thoughts on this question, and then we'll pass it off to other folks. So if you'd like me to repeat that question, it was if they have any thoughts on between the connections between the response and impacts of this crisis to the climate crisis.
And Rev, you should be unmuted.
Oh, great. So let me just first say, in regards to climate change and the coronavirus, that we don't have any direct evidence that climate change is influencing the spread of COVID-19, but we do know that climate change alters how we relate to other species on Earth, which then that matters a lot to our health and our risk for infections. As the planet heats up, animals big and small on land and in the sea are headed to the poles to get out of the heat. This means that animals are coming into contact with other animals they normally wouldn't, and that creates an opportunity for the virus to get into new hosts. Many of the root causes of climate change also increases the pandemics from deforestation, literally wildlife removal. Large livestock farms can also serve in this capacity. So it's clear that for many of us, understanding that climate change has it doesn't have maybe a direct from the evidence, but it does have an effect. What I do want to say, though, which is very important, as people are looking into this process, is that what we do know now, it is likely that people who are exposed to more air pollution and who smoke are going to fare worse. The fact that 68%, particularly as one of the plans we know, I'm not sure what the number is now, but I think it was 9 coal plants that were left in Maryland. Was it 9? I can get a nod. It was. but we were looking at the coal-fired power plants, and we know that 68%, particularly of people of color, African Americans, live within 30 miles of these coal-fired power plants. And so the fact that air pollution becomes a risk factor of getting the coronavirus, particularly for those, because air pollution is strongly associated with people getting pneumonia and other respiratory infections and the like, and getting sicker. This also shows why we need to also just connect the dots in this regard. So I just wanted to say that it's very important we move forward, that as people are looking for the connection between climate and the coronavirus, that we definitely connect the dots. And one of the things about staying home, I just want to just add to that, is that many folks have asked about, will warmer weather slow the spread of the coronavirus? And just want to say that we don't know yet. We don't yet have a sense of what the changing weather will mean for COVID-19. So we shouldn't rely upon warmer weather to curtail transmission. But what we need to do, everything we can right now to slow the spread of the disease, and that means we need to follow the advice that the public health experts are saying in that regard. Thank you.
Thanks, Rev. Lynn Cherry, I think you had your hand up before. I'm going to unmute you and feel free to ask your question.
Okay. I wanted to share my screen for a second, if I can do that. How do I do that? Let's see. Oh, okay. Here it is. Because I've been up in New York State, and they had, for this last couple months, they've had this climate action film festival, and they've been a collection of climate film festivals. So like, for example, this question you just had about whether there's a link between, say, pathogens that are being released into the atmosphere because with the melting of the tundra, or that to find these films and that educate people about these questions that we're all asking. So they had this series. I wanted to show you this. It's put on by Suncommon Climate Action Film Festival, and when the COVID happened, these were at theaters and they were sellout. They were sold out screenings up in New York State and in Vermont, and so they went to a virtual platform. And so I was thinking that would be a really great thing for CCAN and partners to be putting on, is this series of climate action. Like I have a climate action film festival like this, and maybe sponsored by by someplace like Suncommon, and get these kind of films out to people to give them answers to their questions.
Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, if you have a link to that, to those videos or more information, definitely feel free to put it in the chat window. Or
okay, I'll put this. This is a link to the Suncommon website.
Great, thanks so much. I'm going to go to Charlie Garlow now. Charlie, you should be unmuted. Charlie, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. There I am. Good. I got it off mute. I wanted to follow up on Lynn's suggestion about great films that are out there. The DC Environmental Film Festival has free online great environmental films. Go to dceff.org for those who want to pass the time with some good information. My major point that I was going to make was that I think of the coronavirus and the environmental climate change movement as being illustrative of the old-fashioned saying of a stitch in time saves 9. If we've learned anything from the coronavirus pandemic, it is we nip things in the bud or take early action, and the consequences will be a lot less. And the same is true of climate change. It particularly requires leadership that will point us in the right direction in order to be able to take that kind of action to early action that will avoid much greater expense in terms of money and lives later on. We don't need the climate deniers. We don't need coronavirus deniers, either one. And so if I'm speaking to, or not speaking, but necessarily digitally communicating with my representatives, I would try to make that connection between the two in a way that's respectful of those who are humans who are suffering currently, immediately, directly with the coronavirus, at the same time that we know that there will be people who will be suffering and are suffering now because of the impacts of climate change, something which isn't being frequently mentioned. Thanks. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie, for sharing. Someone whose name is Info on here. Go ahead.
Yes, this is Ron Bethay with the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative. I produce a weekly nationally syndicated show called Solar Now in the Future, which is economic impact on Black America. And one thing that's very concerning to me, that's one of the reasons why I joined the call, is that I had the opportunity to speak with James Rakowski, which is the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Labor here in the state of Maryland. And they indicated that the state of Maryland will be receiving $110 million for workforce development training programs starting July 1, but we only have 2 pilot programs for the whole state that's targeting low and moderate income African-American communities, which is Civic Works in Baltimore and Power 52 organization. Mrs. Sherry Brooks is pilot. And when you begin to look at the community colleges, Montgomery College has an outstanding workforce development training program in that arena, but when we look at historically black colleges in the state, they have no programs. So these are all very concerning to me, is the fact that the state legislature has only decided to program $8 million out of that $110 million for workforce development in the state. And where we have, 24 counties with only about 13 with workforce development training programs. So I just wanted to bring that issue to the forefront.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll definitely have to look at that as the state takes a look at stimulus package ideas and make sure we're putting in more funding for job training, especially in the different sectors of the economy that interact with climate work and of course beyond throughout the economy. And then Jim, real quick before we move on to the next question. Jim Lawrenson. Oh, sorry, you're unmuted now.
That's right. So my question has to do with kind of an unusual, I think, use of this the virus as kind of an example, you know, and what the Rev had said, it really resonates in the sense that it does bring us together, et cetera. But using it as kind of a, you know, unfortunately, as an example of really what climate mitigation looks like. You know, I'm part of this, as many of you know, I think this systems or ecosystem study group at Cedar Lane, UU and Bethesda. And, you know, we've pretty much come to the conclusion, reading as much as we can of things by the scientists, that, you know, most of what we're doing, as good as it is in the sense of bringing things in the right direction, getting the big heavy ball moving and the momentum going, it's not going to be nearly enough to do what needs to be done. And, you know, and keeping that in mind is great, but it means keeping it in mind and doing the kinds of things like what we're doing now, which is basically nothing. I mean, that's what real climate mitigation that's going to be effective needs to look at. We can't just keep thinking that we're going to shift to alternative energy, where all you're doing is just transferring the footprint to different places. So I guess my question then is, you know, can CCAN and others pay more attention to that and really think about what real climate mitigation is going to look like, and maybe use this as kind of a model, if you will, of what that really truly means.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think that, you know, for example, increase in teleworking is part of the state's climate action plan right now, which is still a draft as it stands. So if you want to comment on the state's draft climate action plan, MDE has it up on their website. But you know, that's just one example of sort of the kind of increase of behavior in this particular moment that we could expand moving forward as a mitigation strategy. Of course, some things are not going to be, we can't continue to be permanent. There's a lot of people out of work because their jobs aren't possible from afar. And so we have to like really recognize that when we're looking at policies to put in place that are, you know, making sure that we're not putting anyone out of work, and especially with an equity lens. But yes, point taken, and we'll do a good job, hopefully, of paying attention to the moment and capturing certain behaviors that are sustainable that reduce emissions. So Emily, I'm going to turn it back over to you for our next question.
Great, thanks. And there's many more things we can talk about there, including how, especially the stimulus point, I think that a lot of that will be an ongoing conversation. So next, we're actually going to do a couple of polls using the polling feature within Zoom. So you should see a dialogue option pop up when Stephen sends it around. Well, I'll turn it over to Stephen when we do the first one. We're going to do 3 questions, and Stephen can let us know how those responses work. So,
sure. So I'm going to, should I launch that now?
Yes.
All right, launching. So you should see a question in here that says, what kind of digital organizing would you be interested in taking part in?
And just feel free to pick your top one, and if there's others, you know, drop it in the chat that, you know, those you would also be interested in that, or if there's another form, you can also drop that in the chat as well.
So, sorry, but is there a way those of us only on the phone, and I will try not to be on the phone again, can answer this poll or these polls questions?
I think we could we'll have them in an email afterwards as well. So you can,
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give it 10 more seconds, and then I'm going to end the poll. So if you are still filling it out, try to wrap that up now.
And like I said, if there's more than one option that appeals to you, you can feel free to just drop that in the chat.
All right, I'm going to share these results now.
I'm not.
Uh-oh.
Great. So I'm seeing social media.
Emily, do you want to just read out some of the results for those of us who, I, for example, can't see the results. So, so for anyone else who might not be able to see it, and for those of us who are on the phone.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you, everybody, for participating in this new experience with us. So the top result was social media. So that's awesome. We are definitely going to be expanding our social media presence and engaging on in a lot of social media strategies. So awesome to see that 44% of you said that you would be most interested in taking part in social media activism. Then we had a kind of a mix around reaching out to my family and friends, then writing LTE, letters to the editor, contributing to a blog, and phone banking. So that's awesome. And then I'm also seeing that a couple of people are saying in the chat that they'd also be interested in text banking and participating in the blog. So that's awesome. That's really great for us to know. So thank you. Okay, and our next question, Stephen, can you do that one now?
All right, let's see. Yes. So the next question that I'm going to launch right now is, what would you be interested in seeing more from us? And you'll see 5 different options. All right, so that should be up on your screens now. And for those of you who are on the phone, the choices are weekly video office hours, daily stories of joy and inspiration, requests to contact legislators / decision makers, use of Slack or Facebook groups for volunteer group interaction, and virtual book clubs or other community building groups. All right, I'm going to give it another 10 seconds and then I'll end this poll.
Hi, this is Bob. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to say I discovered something on these quizzes, surveys, which is you can, if you hold down Shift at the same time you click on a second or third box, you can click on multiple boxes.
All right, thanks, Bob.
Sure.
All right. All right, so I'm going to share the results of this now as well. And Emily, if you could read out those results again.
Absolutely. Okay, so the top one, which totally makes sense for our CCAN audience because you're all super used to taking action and directly contacting your legislators. The top answer is request to contact legislators and decision makers, and I'm not at all surprised given how active you all are. Then the next one right under that would be virtual book clubs or other community building groups. I think that's super interesting, and I'm definitely very interested in that. So we will explore that for sure. And then following that was daily stories of joy and inspiration, and slightly behind that was weekly office hours. So again, our top response was request to contact legislators and decision makers, and we definitely will have you there. And I'm great to see your responses on this. This is really good information. So thanks for participating. Okay, and the next and last question for the polls anyway is what trainings would you want? So yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
All right, that should be up on your screens now. And for those of you on the phone listening into this, the options are Facebook, Twitter, Slack, blog or LTE writing, and climate change education. And those are options for the question, what trainings would you be interested in?
And I'll just add that if there's something not listed here, please do put it in the chat.
I'm sorry, I don't know what Slack is. I've said the second time I said, what is that? It's another.
Slack is like a chat.
It's like an instant messaging chat platform. So you can chat with a group of people or individually with one-on-one with others or really any number of other people. There's different channels that you can have these chats in. It's basically one big chat room with a select group of people.
Okay, thank you.
It's used by the Sunrise groups. This is Rosales, Betsy, and staff from many environmental organizations use it constantly. So it would be helpful for us to learn to use it, I think. I put that.
Okay, you've won my vote. I
All
will
right.
vote for Slack.
Laura, but just to say one more thing about Slack, I consider it actually a huge committee of people that join a Slack, and then they have subcommittees that are different channels within Slack, and then you can talk to individual people, but you can organize an entire organization through a Slack.
Yeah, it is sounding like we might really just want to have an intro to Slack to come to this poll.
Well, we'll see the results of the poll, which I'm going to close now.
Maybe the only one who checked it.
And then I'm going to share the results. And Emily, if you could read those out for everyone who cannot see.
Okay, so the top answer was climate change education, which is, I think, for sure universal across any platforms. And then the rest of them were honestly about evenly split, with the top one being a little bit biased for Twitter, but then everything else, so we had 39% for Twitter and then 31% for all of the other ones. So it's sounding like this is just something we want to spend some time on and get you all familiar with these tools. So that's great information. Thank you so much. Okay, so that's it for our polling questions. That's super helpful for us in this time as we're, like you mentioned, we're actively planning right now. Obviously, things went completely differently than we thought they were going to. So we are planning right now, and this is information that we can take back with us. So now on to our final question to you all, and then after that, it can be open to a Q&A if you have any other questions for us. Our final question for you all is, what is helping keep you grounded, and do you have any tips to share for the rest of us?
All right, I'm unmuting Alyssa.
Hey, so something that I live with elementary school music teachers, right? So like none of us have anything to do right now. So we've been going outside and like collecting trash in our neighborhood. It kind of makes us feel good that we're doing something positive, but we're still like social distancing and not interacting with other people, but getting out of the house at some point during the day is really nice. So that's what we've been doing.
Awesome, thanks for sharing and continuing to help out with everything at CCAN while you're adjusting to your new school environment. I'm now going to go to unmuting a phone number. Hold on, unmuting 443. Well, I won't read out your whole number, but you probably know who you are.
443? Well, I have a 443
Yeah.
number. I unmuted myself.
All right.
I should have raised my hand.
What? Oh.
Somebody else is talking.
Oh, yes. The last four digits are 6451.
Okay.
That's me, Alan Cohen in Baltimore.
Go ahead, Alan.
Not to cut off anyone. Okay. Well, I guess what's keeping me grounded is, to me, I do get out in nature when I can, and that's definitely keeping me grounded. Always social distancing, but it's just, you hear so much about the coronavirus, it gets overwhelming, and nature is always refreshing to me, and it's all the more so now. You run into other people in nature, it's great, because you know that we know that we are, it somehow it does it roots you like nothing else does. Also, I had to comment on the sort of coronavirus and climate change ideas intersection, and it hadn't worked. Can I say something about that now, or should I email it to folks since it was earlier?
I think
say something about it. Okay, yeah, okay. I had started to think of ways in which the coronavirus threat and climate change are similar and different, and also the way to fight against each are similar and different, or just they're different actually. That, for example, coronavirus is an immediate threat. Climate change is a long-term threat, though of course we know there are a lot of problems associated with it now. To take the analogy from those who remember Inconvenient Truth, the first one, that's where I first heard about the difference between the frog dropped in very hot water and the one dropped in water that's gradually heating up. The one dropped in very hot water will try to jump out, and water gradually will just stay in there until it's too hot and dies. Coronavirus is obviously the frog dropped in very hot water, we're reacting right away. Climate change is the one where it's heating up all around you, and then by the time you realize it's too late. The fight, just a couple of things. Coronavirus requires social isolation and separation. Climate change, fight against it can at least, and certainly does not require social isolation and distancing, can increase social cohesion and cooperation by people acting together and coming together to act. Coronavirus is economically devastating, drastically curtailing economic activity and unemployment. And climate change, economically very positive it can be. For example, renewable energy and energy conservation create many more jobs than fossil fuel production. So those are some of the ideas. I'd be glad to write them up if that would be helpful and send them in.
I think that'd be great.
Okay, I will do that. Try to do that. Should I send it to you, Emily?
Yes, you can do that, or info@chesapeakeclimate.org. Either me.
Okay.
I just want to, this is Mike. I just want to give a shout out to Alan. He is one of our oldest, longest serving volunteers.
I'm not that old. Yeah.
Not old, longest serving volunteers,
Okay.
going back almost to our beginning. So thank you, Alan, for sticking
pleasure.
with us.
Well, it's good to be able to to be honest, I've been out of it for a little while, and it's one, I guess, side benefit of coronavirus. This is a chance. This call is great. Thank you so much for organizing it. It's wonderful to connect with other activists and to just make a positive out of a negative.
Thanks, Alan.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank
Alan.
you, Michael.
And shout out to Stacy, Denise, Emily, and Mike from our team for coming up with the idea to do this call, and
cool.
For putting together the agenda and organizing it all. We cut someone off before, so if you were the person who was speaking, sorry I didn't catch your name, and you have a question, you can go ahead. If not, I'll go to someone else.
Mm-hmm. Or you can answer.
This is Betsy, 443-812. Anyway,
sure.
Nothing profound, just echoing what others have said, that if it weren't for being able to take a hour-long walk maybe for 3 days out of 7, I think we'd go berserk. Because sitting at the computer all day, getting your only form of communication, it's not the healthiest thing in the world either. I think it's very unhealthy to sit for 3 hours, which I did the other day on a series of Zoom calls. So getting up, walking around, getting out, getting some exercise, I think makes everyone feel and be better.
Definitely well put,
And
yes.
And just because I don't want to, under the heading of shout outs and positive things people can do, I don't want to miss the chance to tell you that one of the best ways I think you can feel good about being at home in front of your computer is helping CCAN raise money. And many of you know that we have several board members of CCAN who donated, who actually pulled their own resources and donated a new electric car, a Tesla, to CCAN for the second year in a row, and we're raffling it. And the raffle, our sense of timing is unbelievable. The raffle started March 5th and lasts for 60 days to May 5th. So we've really set a challenge for ourselves to try to sell 3,000 tickets to this raffle, $100 per ticket. We're on track, believe it or not. God bless all the souls who have purchased tickets in the last week. We're on track to meet our goal, but we still have 2,000 more tickets to sell over the next 40 days. So that's something you can do. Go to climatetesla.org. It's climatetesla.org, and just share that link on social media or email it to your friends. Buy a ticket if you can. But it's a cool idea for a fundraiser. It's the second time we've done it. Again, our timing is a little off, but with your help, we can meet this goal. So if you could just share that with everyone you know, that'd be a big help to us. Thank you. And thanks again to the board members, many of you, several of whom are on this call, for donating the card to us.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Emily, should we move to the Q&A section so folks have a chance to ask questions? All right. I'm going to start off with a question that was on the chat from Lily, who wanted to know what we could do here at CCAN to help those of you who are on the phone, feel comfortable logging into future calls on Zoom on video, where you could take advantage of the poll questions and other benefits of being on the video chat. So if any of you on the phone who have suggestions on how to make that easier, any information we can send out, please let us know.
And I think Laura also raised in the chat that maybe we should do a more comprehensive training on Zoom. So we had all of those other options of different social media platforms and communication platforms. And so I think, we could look at adding more information about Zoom, at least a step-by-step for maybe people who are doing it for the first time, for sure.
All right, any questions? Mike, I have your hand was raised before, and I think you're unmuted.
Right, yeah, I was responding to the previous round of questions. I wanted to say that some of the things that are helping me are Zipcar, of which I'm a member. That helps me to reduce my dependence on other people and organizations as far as essential errands like purchasing food and getting to places where I can get food and medication. I guess basically the computer and the internet are also keeping me very busy. I have, I guess, so many different interests and aptitudes that I literally don't get bored and can literally spend hours upon hours on the internet. So I guess I'm an easily satisfied person. Another interesting factor that I've noted is that I'm a bit on the introverted side, and I find that that is helpful in times like this, because I'm not so heavily dependent on having a dense social network, which apparently for many people is a necessity, and for being told that they have to maintain a practice of non-contact with others, I'm starting to appreciate is extremely difficult for a great many people, whereas for me it's relatively easy, since, like I say, I'm basically introverted and have no difficulty with being on my own for periods of time. So those are some of the suggestions that I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. All right, Liz, let me unmute you. You're right, you should be unmuted now.
Oh, sorry, hold on.
No, we can hear you.
Helco Climate Action had a Zoom call this morning, and if y'all could help us with some ideas for reaching out to everyday people. How do you, we're thinking maybe meet up or something, maybe have informational, I don't know. So anyway, just that's what we're kind of hung up, so you're not just preaching to the choir.
Yeah, that's something we're trying to work through ourselves, and we'll definitely happy to shoot some ideas around with you and or let you know what ideas we come up with.
All right. We have a phone number that ends in 6451. You are now unmuted.
Hey, Alan in Baltimore again. So I know there was discussion of mutual aid earlier, and interesting. Can someone say more about it and how you can plug in locally?
Yes. Hi, this is Emily.
Thanks, Emily. Yep.
Yeah, so mutual aid networks are popping up all over the place. the link that we'll send you in the email after the call, it does have a shortened link if you want to just write it down. It's bit.ly/COVID-19 community care, and I will also drop that in the chat, and it will be in an email. There's a map that folks have compiled of all of the different grassroots projects going on. There's more being added. It is completely a grassroots effort of neighbors taking care of neighbors. And it really comes from, I mean, historically, mutual aid has been used by so many groups. It's not just for disaster relief. A huge shout out, especially to Black civil rights leaders, and in DC, Black Lives Matter has really taken on the spearheading of the mutual aid efforts in DC. And the idea is that you expand your network and kind of assess how your community is doing through these various tools. And so we'll make sure you get that link that shows you what's active, and if you don't see anything active, the tools to start that up in your area.
Thank you very much.
Which is what. So what I did in my area, I didn't see anything going on, so I posted to a couple of local Greenbelt groups, and got a couple of volunteers who were really interested in that. You really want to find people to do it with, like early on, who are also bought into the idea, who can help, because once you get started, it can be a lot. You want to, but that's a great way to like make those connections and really support each other. So far we've had a really good experience with it. We'll keep it going. AOC did a great webinar about it, and it's there's a lot of different approaches. So we'll send you that link, and if you want to talk to me about it through my email, I'm super welcome that, because we're learning together as we go. But yeah, it's been really helpful to also know that if I need something, my neighbors could help me out.
Thank you very much.
And Emily, if you could put that link in the chat, I think.
Let me put that link in the chat.
Yep. Mike, do you want to send us off with any last thoughts?
Yeah, we have reached the 2-hour mark, and I can't tell you as organizers how gratifying it is when we experiment with a new form of organizing, and it seems to go pretty okay. And I think that this call went even better than that. So thank you all for devoting an hour and a half of your evening. It's good to see so many familiar faces and hear familiar voices for those of you on the call, and to see new faces and hear new voices as well. So we want to thank you again. This is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. Our country and our planet have been forever changed by this virus, and we're witnessing and participating in the positive part of that change on this call. It's good to know that the issues we care about aren't going anywhere. They're still very much alive. We're going to stay in touch on different ways to continue climate organizing and helping our neighbors at the same time. So you've all inspired us, and on behalf of my excellent staff who you've all seen on display tonight, and on behalf of the board of directors, several of whom are on this call, and our 20,000 supporters across the state, we want to thank you all, and we look forward to the next time we see you. All right. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.